keys all day long.
When Dad was to burn your elementals, when he made a talisman for you, he had his finger about 3 foot from the candle flame, and he'd just go a little finger to, I think would sputter and flash. Okay, well, Maria, could you put the same slide on again, please?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's continue talking about this, but this time we're going to look at it from a different angle, from the angle of the dimension. Now we have everything's 7, right? 7 archangels, 7 colors of the rainbow, 7 notes on the scale, and that's a divine number of creation. So we have the 7 dimensions. And what are they? Well, the first dimension is a theoretical noetical point. It's just a point. There's no width to it, no height to it. It's just a theoretical noetical point. And that's all that can be said about it. The second dimension is like a drawing on the surface of the paper. But it doesn't include the paper because the paper has a thickness to it. So a 2-dimensional drawing is a representation of something else. For example, we got this Lamura Island, and it had 2 active volcanoes, and you see it's painted with smoke coming out. 2-dimensionally, it's obviously not 3-dimensional, it's not movement. So in the first dimension, second dimension, there is no movement. It's just, in the second dimension, it's just representing movement in the third dimension. So the third dimension, we all know, height, width, breadth. And then we come to the fourth dimension, which is the psychical worlds. Now, a lot of scientists today are saying, oh, the fourth dimension includes time. No, it doesn't. Time is an illusion associated with the material world, something we ascribe to passing events. So we give it hours, days, weeks, years. That's how we chart it, by the passing of events. And then we come to the noetical, which is the world of the 5th dimension. And that's, beyond that is the reflection of the 7th dimension in the 6th dimension, which is in just below the line between beingness and existence. And the 7th dimension is, of course, the noetic state. So, one, just kind of make a difference between the dimensions. In the 3rd dimension, no 2 material objects can occupy the same space. But in the 4th dimension and 5th dimension, they can. How can they? How is that possible? Well, the best example of it is right now, we're sitting in a room full of radio signals, right? But they don't get mixed up. They're in the same place, but they don't get mixed up because each of them has its own vibrational frequency. So you could have thousands of things in the same place, each vibrating at its own distinct rate. So, and this is hard to understand too, but in the psychical world, we're talking about our psychical body. Well, when you get to the 4th dimension, the sense of space is annihilated. And it's replaced with this thing called the sense of place. So think about it. We're right here on these coordinates, wherever we are on the planet Earth, 39 degrees or whatever. And it's in this space. That's the space. But in that space is a sense of place. This room, this house, this building. So too on the psychical plane, what we end up with is a sense of space. Sense of place, but not space. So that means that in the psychical world, your psychical body could be just on the petal of a psychical flower, or take up the entire psychical counterpart of the planet. You could be in the whole planet at the same time. So the sense of space as we understand it, it's just completely annihilated. Completely annihilated. And then as you get to the noetical plane, then you lose the sense of time, you know. In all these worlds, the sense of time changes. So material world, we know what time is. Psychical world, it's relative. It's relative. So what could be 5 minutes in the material world could take 2 hours in the noetical world. In fact, Dascos often made this point, that when he gave a lesson in the psychical world, it would be a 2-hour lesson, but he would just close his eyes sitting on the couch with everybody around, and 5 minutes later he'd poke his eyes open, and he'd given a 2-hour lecture, the equivalent of a 2-hour lecture on the other side. And so as we go up, the sense of time changes. In the noetical world, time just starts to lose its meaning altogether, and in the higher noetical world, you're on the threshold of the eternal now being beingness. So all these things, all these dimensions give us a different sense. There's different laws in them, and different sense of space. Yes?
You mentioned that in the second dimension, there's no movement. What about the videos or animation? Are they like in between dimensions?
Do you really think that's movement?
I mean,
Basically, what's a movie but a series of non-moving still pictures? But they just run fast enough that it gives you this sense of movement. But there's no real movement in those still pictures, right? Each frame of a film has a picture, like a still picture. And then the next frame is a still picture. If you move them fast enough, then you get the sense of movement.
and what about the vibration of the particles of
The vibrational what?
the particles of the pictures?
They're in the third dimension.
The particles, what do you mean by particles of the pictures?
Yeah, like we say
Electrons?
That's light,
they're in the
no?
third dimensions. The electrons, yeah, that's what I was thinking. No?
You're looking at those from the third dimension, no? So those particles are actually in the third dimension.
Yeah, I don't know. I would say that there's no movement in that still frame. And you see it when you're talking about a video, you're talking about light behind. So there's no real movement in each frame of your video or a film camera. Yeah. Yeah.
So can I say for the film that basically what we have is two-dimensional frames moving at a certain rate and produce an illusion of me that I see it as movement.
Right.
It's an illusion, it's not movement, it's an illusion.
Yeah, it's the movement of the still two-dimensional. It's
The
making
movement
this
of the still
sense.
frames through the light that me, because of my detective apparatus to see each individual frame, I'm not that fast enough, my brain to see, I see it as a movement, but actually it's a still thing, it's not a movement.
That's visually. And what about audibly?
If you have a bird that perceives 240 frames per second, and the bird will see still frames, not a movement.
I don't know about the audio. Let me get back to you on that. I'll think about that one.
Could you just briefly differentiate, I always get these confused in my mind, and probably my fault, but between noetic and noetical?
Sure. The noetic has the ideas, these archetypal ideas. And the noetic state is everywhere. Hard to understand that, but from our perspective, but it's everywhere. And it's only down when the archangels take these archetypal ideas in the noetic state and dress them with noetical substance. They bring them into form. There's no form in the noetic. It's an idea form, but it's not like a bodily form. So the bodily forms start in the noetical, and then down to the physical.
So it's like one of the veils, but in a good sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
The world of ideas of Plato is a noetic state.
The archetypal idea?
know-
Plato's
Plato's
world of
ideas.
World of ideas.
The worlds of
dimensions.
ideas is the same thing what we're calling the noetic state,
Noetic.
which is the archetypal idea, same exact thing, yeah. And, so they all create a, sense of space in the material, place in the psychical and noetical. So, in Daskalos's Joshua Emanuel book, he'll say what the 7 heavens are. Now we're going to talk about 7 heavens. The first heaven is where? It's here. Earth is the first heaven. In his book, he says the second heaven is the etheric double of the material plane. The third heaven is the psychical plane. The fourth heaven is the etheric double of the psychical plane. The fifth heaven is the noetic plane, and the etheric double of the noetic plane, which is a reflection of the noetic state, is the sixth heaven. And then the noetic state is the seventh heaven. Nobody can tell you. People, even Daskalos who reaches there, works there in the noetic state, he can't really say much about it. There are no words to describe it. He can say, oh, it's marvelous, it's wonderful, but there are no real words to describe it. No master can describe it. So, but then, if you go back to his first book, Esoteric Teachings, he tells the story differently. First heaven is earth, second heaven is psychical plane, the third heaven, and St. Paul speaks about the third heaven, he's talking about the noetical plane, and then the 4 higher worlds, in the beingness, in the noetic state. So why does he tell that differently, do you think? I mean, it's completely, looks like he made a mistake or he's changed it or something, but he hasn't. And it has to do with our view on it. From our standpoint, looking up, we feel like that etheric double of each of the 3 worlds is another heaven. And it kind of is. Yet, from the top looking down, the etheric double of the material world is in the 3rd dimension. The etheric double of the psychical world is in the 4th dimension. So the etheric double of the noetical world is in the 5th, I said it backwards, yeah, no, 5th dimension, right. So it's just a matter, I've asked this question, it was paradox. It depends on how you're looking at it. So, but everything is coming from this archetypal state. So in that book, he refers to the 4 higher worlds, worlds of, they just kind of, they don't even describe them because nobody on earth has visited them there yet. We hear messages from those who dwell in those worlds, that's how he gets the information. But he himself has not crossed that line. That line where the soul self is, below is existence, above is beingness. Now, have you ever gone to a car park to park your car and you drive in and it has those spikes, right? And you drive, it's okay that way, but you can't come back, right? Anyone who crosses that line doesn't come back. At least not in this incarnational sense. They can come back as dominions or something, but that's a really big differential between these 2 worlds. It's a boundary that you don't cross. Now, when and people with a strong egotism and practice spirituality, they can get very, very high. But when they get to this point, there's an archangel that says, stop, go back. It's called the ring pass on. It's one of the ring pass on. You're not allowed to go there. Ring pass on. That's a mystical term for places you're not allowed to go.
Is that where the guardian of the threshold would be, or is that in the lower worlds?
You're talking about Cerberus?
No, guardian of the threshold, it's a term that you find in a lot of the teachings that,
Probably is. I haven't run across it.
Okay.
It is a threshold. And what happens is, he'll stop and say, no, go back. And if you try to willfully push your way through, boom, you drop. And it takes a long, long time for you to ever get back from it. And this is one of the problems about people who approach the teachings in an egotistical way, just trying to force it. Now, from my experience, a lot of people, when they get a hold of it, they want to run right to the top. It's just a common thing. They want to just go fast past the lower world and get to the top. And that's wrong because it's like you're building a pyramid. You want a really wide foundational base. So you really, really want to study the outer circle teachings over and over and over because they provide a base for these higher teachings to come in. Without that base, you end up you grow, but you end up like a sunflower in its head and it falls over because it can't support itself. So don't be in a hurry.
That's good.
And
That's
I've seen a couple people who
Good.
they just somehow grab that higher teaching for themselves and they completely they just lose the point of it. And they don't get very far. And I think those who demand that kind of stuff, they're really set back on the path by if they even get a hold of these deeper teachings. But so don't be in a hurry, just you were building a big solid foundation. Look at that pyramid in Egypt, right? 200 million stones or however many stones in the thing. And it's built very basic. And that's why it's proved the test of time. And it's the same thing with our spiritual practice.
In a way, wouldn't you say that the system itself is protected for this type of approach from people? Like that really, even that we have higher teachings or higher practices, if we don't practice the base and we don't go through the, do the work and purifying ourselves, then we really don't. It will be just words more than something else, in a paper, because...
Yeah, I mean, teachings are protected that way, and Dascalos tried to protect them even more by creating the outer circle, the inner circle, the innermost circle, and the inmost circle. And you had to pass, of course, he's the master watching, pass through these circles, and you didn't get to the next one until they knew you really had a good take on the lower ones.
I know in sports, in the military, being a soldier, why do they go back to fundamentals? Basics, fundamentals. I know in the military, when you're under stress in a situation, they don't want you thinking about it. You just react. That's,
Yeah,
I
you
know
think it
she's
was right.
going right, I'm going left, going straight. And I had soldiers many times say, we've done this 1,000 times. I know what to do, but yet we do it again and again and again. Now as we go along, you might add something in special situations, but you have to know the basics.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
But if you get to have an experience of the soul self, may it be because it was granted to you? Because I think that it's very hard just to sleep there without all these watchers and keepers, no? Maybe there's a reason why you got that experience. I don't know.
Sure,
Because
absolutely.
it's not easy just to sleep over there.
Absolutely. In the beginning, as you're doing this, you'll have these really high experiences. And it's not you doing it. It's your guardian or a master or a brother guide inside. And what he's doing is really reshaping your psychonoetical body so it can have that experience, so it can be able to reach to that. When he stops, then you can't reach to it on your own. So they give you to like show you what's ahead and give you a sense of it, give you a feeling of it. And that's another good point. What's our psychical body look like? I've been saying it has the residual image of the material body, but does it really?
Not always.
If it's not developed.
Well, there's two psychical bodies. There's the pure archetype one, which is held by the guardian angel, and there's the ones we have, well, I should say maybe three, and the ones that we create, that we think, okay, we look this way, we have a certain shape and all that stuff. That's our residual image. But when a master sees your psychical body, when he sees the psychical body of a common person, it looks like a sack of lumpy potatoes. Because they haven't shaped it. They haven't developed it. And the more you shape it, the more you're able to enter these higher states and have those experiences. So what an invisible helper will do with you, he'll reshape it temporarily just so you can have that experience. And now you have a touchstone, you have a memory of what it is that you can relate to, and you know what you're looking for. You know what's ahead.
Daniel, so during our visualization of our light body, so are we shaping it when we're visualizing it too?
Visualizing our body having
Yeah.
the shape of the material body, yeah, because the material body has already been shaped for us. We don't have to shape
No, I'm
it.
talking about our psychical body.
Yeah,
like-
so we should see our psychical body in that perfect shape. But even more than that, what is that perfect archetypal psychical body look like? It looks like what Christ showed. He gave us the perfect example of a human being, mentally, emotionally, and physically. So it's up to us to shape it. So that archetype held by the guardian angel is really like our blueprint. Christ demonstrated that, love your enemy, forgive. When we start doing that, we shape our psychical body, and that raises our consciousness enough to have these higher level experiences.
This is what we are doing on the symbol of life.
Yes. So it takes a long time. It just takes a long time to shape it. But at some point, the whole process starts accelerating. Like we showed in that video on the first day, it's like lump, lump, and then it starts to get rounder, and then pretty soon it's very fast. And the things you can do that took you years to do can be done like that once you develop. Is there any questions on these bodies and the personality inhabiting them? See, because the material body is not the personality. The material body is used by the personality as a vehicle. The personality is really the psychic and noetical body, which means the body of emotions and the body of our thoughts. That's the real psychical body.
They're all vehicles, right? Just higher forms of vehicles. All the bodies are just vehicles, but higher forms.
They're obvious, as you said?
I mean,
Other forms.
all the 3 different bodies are all vehicles, but higher forms of vehicles, and our personality is separate from that, right?
Our personality is the psychonoetical body,
Okay.
completely. We, as a spirit ray, inhabit those bodies. They're ours, but they're not us. That's the whole
That's
kind
the
of
whole
shift you gotta get, is that your emotions and your thoughts are yours, but they're not you.
Yeah.
And the proof of that is you can change them, and they change automatically anyway, but you can change them. Say, I don't wanna do that anymore, and so you kick it out. So who is that entity that's doing that change? That's what we're looking for.
That's, yeah.
Yes,
And is that what the I don't know how to pronounce it, Serenian Hind exercise is about, is getting to the point where we don't define ourselves by our body anymore, but we see that our personality is the psychonoetical.
yeah, I'm not, which exercise were you mentioning?
The Hind exercise.
Yeah, we're trying to chase down that personality and capture it and bring it under our control, because it's creating way more damage than the boar, the labor of the boar, which represents the material body. So that personality is just elusive, and it just hops and jumps, and it's really, really difficult to catch it. It took Hercules a whole year to chase it down in the forest because it ran so fast. And finally, it's getting ready to cross a river, and he's going to lose it. So he takes his bow, but he knows he can't kill it because it belongs to the goddess Artemis. So he shoots it and hits it in the hind leg, and it wounds it, and it's exhausted from being chased. So it surrenders. That represents how most of the time we don't surrender until the personality gets wounded. It's then we start to seek the higher self. We lose something important in our life, or we get hurt, or we have some horrible illness that it catches the personality, and now you can control it. But I don't mean control in an oppressive, heavy-handed way. I mean control like riding a horse, right? You don't pull, and you don't kick it real hard all the time. You try to guide it, and that's what we have to do with our personality. It's like a fish, it goes in the stream and the river's coming this way. It doesn't fight directly against the river, it goes like this.
Yeah.
Or a bird in the wind, same
Yeah.
thing. So that's what we should do as personality, guide our personality. Because we are the masters, should be the masters of the personality. We're not, most of us. But we're gaining more and more control as we practice and go along. Yeah.
Good.
Is the divine love on all of the planes?
Divine what?
Is divine love on all of the planes?
Oh, absolutely. There's no place divine love is not. And on the higher planes, the higher you go, the more you experience it. And higher you go, the more you realize it's really coming through you. It's around you and it's you. Yeah.
Donna, you were talking about, people taking a fall from forcing into a higher state, like the Daskos talk about like pitfalls in the path, like following gurus. and
Pitfalls?
What happens to them.
Yeah, yeah. The beautiful thing about it, no matter what happens, it's all God's mercy for us, even the bad experiences. Because they shake us, We fall in the pit, oh gosh, I have to climb back out, And next time you fall in the pit again, I've got to climb back. And finally you say, I'm tired of climbing back out. I'm not going to fall in that pit next time. So it wakes us up. Yeah.
Good point.
What happened when we talked about it?
Are you asking to me?
Hmm?
Are you asking to me?
I'm asking to myself.
Sandy, did you say divine love?
Yes.
Divine love is, as he said, everywhere. But the divine love manifests in the world of material world as the law of cohesion, attraction, and repulsion. So divine love is motion, kinesis, and movement. And when it lowers down, it appears, it manifests as the motion, movement. And in the material world, it's like a attraction. That's why when we, like each other, we want to get close, right? But when we are not like that, then slowly, And then when we fight each other, we create a big repulsion, right? It's all science, So divine love is motion. That's why all universe is under the law of divine love, which is, in a sense, it's Kundalini, which we are studying right now in labor 11 and 12. You saw the dragon, right? And we will make a lot of exercise afternoon, caduceus of Hermes. It's all about the movement, the primal force in the universes and in us at the bottom of the spine.
There's something else about these worlds of duality. Everything in existence is a world of duality. Down here we have hot, cold, night, day, and even the body shows it. 2 nostrils, 2 lobes of the brain, upper chamber of the heart, lower chamber, 2 arms, 2 legs. We are in the worlds of duality. And the higher you go, the less that duality is apparent until you reach the eternal now. Now these 4 higher heavens, 4 higher heavens in the noetic state, they're worlds of a simulation. And it's so difficult to understand anything about them because, it's all the eternal now. So for me, it's even hard to conceive of them as separate worlds. Everything is in the now. It's all one thing. Even on this symbol of life, all the centers are really in one center. So it's hard to understand that, but that's the way it is. We have this duality here, but all of it's in the oneness. All of it's in the oneness. So the duality here, we have heaven and hell, right? Well, it's really paradises in hell, because in the heaven are paradises in hell. In the heaven worlds, the higher worlds, the psychonoetic, there are hells and paradises. But the whole thing is what Christ was calling the heaven. So Origen, the first great church father, taught that hell's, back in those days, all your eternal damnation into hell, right? Once the Christian religion was hijacked by Constantine, they really heavy-handed it and created this sense of sins and all these, just everything became very serious and heavy. So you're going to go to hell, right? So they were trying to scare the people into heaven by telling them if they don't do right, they're going to go to hell. Now, some stories say that they did that meaning well, thinking that if people thought they had multiple lifetimes, they would make an effort in this one, you know. And that was probably true, but they shouldn't have lied to them, because hells are not eternal. And Origen was the first one to really come out and say that. And this is an interesting point. You think about this when you run into your own little conditional hell, that hells are conditional and temporary and last only as long as the person has guilt. It's really guilt that's holding us in these hells. You have to meditate on your own life and your own experiences. But that's one of the main things he brought forward. And of course, Origen was the first guy since the Egyptian civilization to work with the symbol of life. When he was 15, he just started sketching it from some past life memory. He started sketching it, but he changed it. See, the Egyptians had one circle up here at the top, and so do the Jewish tree of life. They have one center at the top. But he changed that one center into 3 triangles because of St. John's revelation of the Christ, and the teachings of Christ, that God is the Father, Son, and Holy Ghost, right? So that's when that triangle became the top portion of it. And Origen was really, he was just a great, great way shower. And he taught this to his disciples. And it was a time of great, great Roman persecution in the 200 AD. And it was before Constantine took it. But the Romans just wanted to kill him. But they were afraid of making him a martyr, and everybody think of him as bigger than that. So he's got 6,000 written scrolls about the teaching, including the symbol of life. And he's got many schools, and they're teaching it in many schools. And the Romans come down and they sack the schools and kill the students, burn the scrolls, and they take him and put him in prison, where they break every bone, literally almost every bone in his body. And what they would do is they would break his bone and wait till it healed, and they would break it again.
He had completely ulcerated legs by the end of his life.
Ulcerated?
His legs were covered in ulcers at the end of his life.
Wow. So they release him like 4 or 5 years before he dies. And of course he comes out, his teachings, his world is destroyed, his students are gone. And he goes to the Essenes, who take him to Cyprus, where he gives the Essenes the symbol of life just before he dies. And the Essenes like, wow, okay, we're gonna guard it, right? And then when the Knights Templar came in much later, they gave it to the Knights Templar, who protected it with their lives. And then after they get slaughtered, it disappears. And then, like, I think the Rosicrucians are using the tree of life, not the symbol of life. But it disappears. It really disappears for all that time until Dascalos brought it out again. Of course, the spirit soul of Dascalos was the spirit soul of Origen. So it's a continuation. And what he was remembering as a 15-year-old child was his memories from him being the high hierophant in Egypt under Akhenaten, who brought the symbol of life forward. They had the symbol of life, but they had Egyptian gods in each center. And with Akhenaten, Pharaoh Akhenaten's revelation, he took all that out and put the Ankh sign in them.
Is there a relationship between I can never say that, Akhenaton and Moses? Akhenaten and Moses? Is there a relationship?
Well, yeah. Now Moses, even if you're a saint, even if you're a dominion, you come to earth there, you have to obey the laws of cause and effect, right? So Moses was really misusing the stuff to create the plagues and killing the firstborn and making the frogs and all the blood in the Nile and all that stuff. He was doing it but he was doing it for probably out of necessity to free, to free the Jews, right? But Daskos tells it a little differently. He says that 200, now they got it wrong in time. Moses was really 200 years before Akhenaten.
Oh,
So they've got it wrong that way.
okay.
And at the time of Moses, the only reason the Jews were enslaved is because they couldn't pay the taxes. So it wasn't quite as bad as the story we're told. So they had to have so many years in being in servitude to pay off their taxes, and they were free again. And some Jews were wealthy enough to pay the taxes and were never enslaved. So a previous wise Pharaoh had designed that, so they just wouldn't be enslaved for all their life. There was a way to get out of it. But 200 years later, Akhenaten comes, and he kind of undoes the bad stuff the harmful stuff that Moses had done. And he says, that's what it says, Akhenaten was Moses. He had to
That's what I was getting at, yeah.
Reincarnate back in, correct the thing. And now he killed people, right? With things. So now he has the obligation of being killed. So they poisoned him. And he didn't die. They poisoned him again. He didn't die. They poisoned him 9 times before they actually killed him. And the last time was when he went to Tutankhamun's 19th birthday, I believe it was. It was his birthday. And that's where he gave him all the great gifts and everything we see in the museums now. But he goes back from that and he dies physically.
So you mentioned about the Essenes. I think many people nowadays, we don't know about them or the relationship between Christ. And I'm wondering if you have to just mention about them.
Sure.
as a general approach, but also how can we differentiate between this and modern day religion? Because there's so much lies, I feel, in the religion.
Well, in biblical Palestine, most of the 2/3 of the population were Jewish. 1/3 were Essenes, which is not a Jewish sect like they tell us, like the historians. They haven't really understood the Essenes very well. The Essenes were really descendants of Akhenaten's people who went into the desert. They wanted, when Akhenaten was killed, some of the Egyptians that were following went back to the Egyptian society. But the Essenes, who were Greek-speaking people, and Greek was their mother language, they preferred to go out into the desert and set up communities there and practice in solitude, basically. And when Christ had to escape Israel when he was born, escape from being killed, he went to the Essene community. And he was also born into the Essene community in Israel. So he was not a Jew. I know everybody's going to say, oh, he was a Jew. No, he wasn't a Jew. He was an Essene. And the Essenes basically had the same teaching as the Jews, except they took out the vengeful God, an eye for an eye, and all that stuff. They took that out. That's not the truth. God is a God of mercy, not a God of revenge and jealousy, as it says in the Old Testament. So they really were in a bad place because at that time the Romans occupied a place and the Jews wanted them out. They wanted to fight and drive them out. And so they really didn't like the Essenes, and they were using any chance they could to stone them for violating Mosaic law. But they couldn't get rid of them completely because they needed that extra people to help throw out the Romans, they thought. And then there was the other ones, the Sumerians, right? That was another class in Israel at that time. And the Jews thought, if you're walking in the shadow from, I just lost it, Sumerian, falls on you, you were cursed. Can you imagine living that way where you thought somebody else's shadow fell on you, you were cursed?
Are you
They were
talking
so
about
bad.
Samaritan or Sumerian? Is
What's
that?
that?
are you- Samaritan, okay,
Samaritan.
that's what I thought, I
Not,
wasn't
yeah,
sure.
not,
Sounded like Samaritan.
So anyway, they were killing those guys all the time, and that's why Christ gave the Samaritan woman water. She was so amazed that she was given water, because they were like the untouchables in India.
Yeah.
They didn't want anything to do with them.
Daniel, I'm a little confused on the time frame of the history. As I understand, the Jews follow Moses, right?
What?
The Jews
Yes.
follow Moses.
Yeah.
And the Jews have the idea of this one God.
Yeah.
But if Akhenaton came 200 years after Moses,
Mhm.
and in my understanding, he was actually the first one to get this realization that there's only one God.
Yeah, I'm confused by that too.
Right, but to see what they did was, they believed in one true spirit God, but that God was revengeful. So it was an element, they were adding an element, they believed there was one true God, but I'll use Dasquille's word, they dressed it in Jewish sentiment. They had jealousy, they had the feeling of taking revenge, so they imagined that God had the same thing. So they ascribed human weaknesses to that God, so it wasn't really the true one God.
So even,
And also, they believed in multiple gods for a long time in the Jewish thing, until Babylonia, I think.
Right,
That
okay.
we were captured in Babylonia.
right.
So even though Moses was an Egyptian prince and he studied these teachings from the Egyptian mystery schools, he also got this realization that there was only one God.
No, he got the realization, but he's the one who started describing all these things. This is the way Dascalos tells it. That Moses got really teed off because they didn't make him Pharaoh. He wanted to be a leader of people.
Yeah.
Right.
He also said he was a bit of a Casanova.
No, that's true.
So, he wanted to be Pharaoh. And at the time, there was a Pharaoh, and the daughter of the Pharaoh had gotten him from the Nile in the basket, because his mother had pushed the basket down because she knew where the Pharaoh's daughter took a bath, and she was really hoping she would take him and protect him, because they were killing the firstborns, because they were getting too many Jews. They started killing the firstborn. So he was raised as an Egyptian prince, so he had access to the school. But Ramses was the Pharaoh at the time, and he had a son called Ramses II, right? And he was semi-insane, that's what it said.
Yeah.
But the father couldn't give the kingdom of Egypt to a non-Egyptian. He couldn't give it to a Jewish person. So he didn't. So then
They knew he was Jewish?
What's that?
They knew he was Jewish, Moses?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure. And so you read in the Bible, Moses killed an Egyptian. And then he starts leading the people out. Well, the Egyptian he killed was himself, his old Egyptian prince thing. So he took off the prince clothes, put on the regular clothes, and started leading the people out of Israel. But to do it, he had to overcome the Pharaoh's resistance to it at that time. So, yeah, so it was a long story. So it's Moses, and then later, 200 years later, Akhenaten comes, which is reincarnation of Moses. And he tries to offset the thing, taking out the, like Moses put the demons in, glyphos, in certain centers. And that's how they commanded things. And so it was used for good and evil. So Akhenaten was trying to change that. So it threw out all those kind of names and put in the Ankh, just a symbol of Ankh. And it was Origin that put in these other symbols.
So the Jews in the time of Moses already believed in one God?
The Jews, that's a good question. Did they already believe in one God before Moses? But he really, that's what it said, he took actually a Greek God and then put these other, he kind of created the idea of this God with revenge and all that. Yeah.
And we're talking about Jehovah, Yahweh, that's who we're talking about.
I'm sorry, I'm having a
We're
hard
talking
time.
about Jehovah?
Jehovah, yeah, right, exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Did Akhenaten know that he was Moses?
I don't have any information on it. I don't know about that. But certainly inside he knew he did these things that Moses had done wrong and sent the people in the wrong direction on the understanding of God. Oh, yeah, that's a good question. I don't know if you knew.
Is it Dominion? So
Very high.
we can tell it.
And then you said that Dascalos said that he was living again around the time that Dascalos was alive in Switzerland or something, just not doing anything.
Oh, yeah.
What would he be doing? Just resting or just in,
This is a really
behind the scenes?
curious thing. When I was there, Dascalos went out and he would travel around and give seminars, right? And he went to Switzerland. And after one of the classes, a Swiss couple come up and said, "Can you come look at our son? There's something wrong with him. What's going on?" He said, "He's speaking this strange language at night when he sleeps. Can you come and see, can you help?" And sure, so he goes, and it's Ankanan. And I haven't seen a picture, I don't have the picture, but he was a young boy, maybe 16 or 17, and he was like sitting on Dascalos' lap, and he had that caricature face
Oh
of
my
Ankanan.
goodness.
Wow.
But nobody knows what happened to him. He didn't follow Dascalos, he didn't stay around, so nobody knows what happened to him, or what he's doing, or, you know.
Huh.
What year was this, in the 80s?
This was 1991, I saw the picture, and he was like 16 or 17. He was real gangly and had a big smile. Both him and Dascalos had a big smile, because they loved each other so much in that Egyptian lifetime.
While you guys were doing the Symbol of Life last year, as you know, I couldn't come because I had that trip to Egypt. And unusually, most tours don't do this, but this was a little particular. We went to Tel El Amarna, which is the city
you really?
that
Yeah.
Akhenaton built. Once upon a time, it was quite kind of impressive in a negative way because they literally wiped out the whole thing except for one pillar. There's literally one pillar
Is that right?
and some rocks, and we went to what they think is the tomb as well. And it's just like he took away their gods, and the Egyptians did not like that, the masses. And they just, I mean, literally, there's not stone upon stone except this little huddle of stones and one pillar
Wow.
of the whole. And it's a huge area, like
Yeah,
miles
yeah.
and miles. Beautiful area, but there was literally nothing left. I
See,
was
what
like,
Akhenaten had done is at that time, there was 42 different gods, animal-headed gods, and they each had priests, crafts, and the people were paying these guys lots of money to pray for their departed. So Akhenaten comes, and he has a direct experience using the symbol of life of the one true spirit God. And he comes out and he says, "Okay, this has to stop. There's only one true spirit God, and you guys," he didn't make them stop. He gave them the chance to come over to the new religion, which they didn't want to do because they were making so much money. So he said, "Okay, I'll just go out into the desert in a new place that's never been built, and we'll have our city, and I won't interfere with you guys." But they wanted to kill him. They wanted, just like Jesus or Socrates, anytime anybody brings new information, they want to kill him. So he goes out and he makes this thing. Now, always before, you had these great monumental Egyptian buildings out of giant stone, but he made them out of stones one man could carry because they wanted to build the city fast. So once they finally kill Akhenaten, not only do they go and destroy that city, they go out and chisel off his name off of any place in Egypt, as well as Tutankhamun.
that was
After
the worst curse you could do, was to take away the name
Yeah.
for an Egyptian. That was like eternal damnation.
Yeah, or break off the nose of the statue. So you see all these broken noses off of them. There's a few of Akhenaten statues that are still left without broken noses. But they just tried to erase, just because, once they killed him, they propped Tutankhamun up on the throne as a boy king. But he was not, he had an illness, and he was not really that big. He was just a pup. So the conspirator that killed Akhenaten propped up Tutankhamun for a while, and then mysteriously he dies, and they examined his skull, and there's a fragment of his skull inside his head. Now, he could have either been hit to knock that fragment out, or he could have fallen down. We don't really know, but it's likely they killed him, and they tried to kill everybody. Nefertiti, the wife of Akhenaten, had to run to the south of Egypt to get away to keep from being killed. Tutankhamun's sister was killed. So they were just trying to erase the name out, and it was so effective. None of the pharaohs, after that, conspirators became pharaohs. After they put themselves on the throne, Egypt just went down. But the succeeding pharaohs, even like Cleopatra, nobody knew Akhenaten or Tutankhamun existed till 1907.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's just the dark side. It's just
Yeah.
they just want their power and their corruption.
We got it going today.
We got it really going today. That thing I read to you about Daskalos from January 1991, what would he say now about the elementals fighting and how close we are to that war he said shouldn't happen? Okay. I'm good. Ready?
Done?
Yeah, sure. I'm gonna go out here because Tracy's gonna bring this food.
Okay. Oh, the thing is,
I have to pay.
Oh, okay, great.
Okay, then everyone, please relax. If we need to go to restroom, if we go home, please.
Thank you.
Yes, I believe it was this first. As long as it's orange.
The one you said.
That's not what I'm doing. I also heard that.
I can talk to you about my experience. I can talk to you about it on the break if you want to get back. You want to talk about it on the break? You're misunderstanding.
Now we will move on to the dedication. Before that, when we reach a certain limit, according to the lecture, the angels who stops us is Kalafa and Serafa. In general, it's called Seraphim.
Seraphim,
Yeah,
okay.
Cherubim,
Okay.
Seraphim. They cherubim show up, appear, and they stops us. No
So like the
other,
guardian of the
yes,
seraphim.
No more. Huge. Okay, I have some comment at the end of the exercise. So let's go in the meditation about the story of Hercules, last labor. Let's contemplate on the meaning of the last labor. And as I said yesterday, labor number 11, labor number 12, teaching doesn't explain each character, what it means, or almost no information. But please take a very important principle and the essence. I'm gonna read it from now, so please meditate on very important principle behind the story. So everyone, please close your eyes. Close your eyes. Now it is time for contemplation. Peacefully reviewing the whole story of part 1 from the perspective of your real self, Hercules. Let's contemplate on the meaning behind it. Your last labor is to go to the underworld, the worlds beyond. The worlds beyond means the ethereal world, the psychical world, and the noetical world of this planet. We are living on the surface of the planet Earth in the material world, which is the third dimension. The psychical world is the fourth dimension. Noetical world is the fifth dimension. All these three worlds interpenetrate each other with the connecting link of the etheric and ethereal counterpart. But in each world, different law and condition are prevailed. So they must be guarded by the law that keep them in order. The three-headed dog, Kerberos, symbolizes the law of order, to keep different laws and conditions in each world in order, and control the traffic between the worlds. Its three heads symbolize the three worlds. This law restricts the personality re-entering into the material body once it leaves the material body. Also restricts the personality who has the material body remaining in the psychonoetical worlds. For example, many of those who passed with the wish to materialize their bodies again, to see their beloved ones. Many who live in the material world, missing their loved ones who passed on, and wish to go their place to live together with them on the other side. But they have to remain in their dimension to learn their own lessons. So this law is keeping the order of incarnations from which no one can escape. Kerberos is a loyal, faithful gatekeeper of the three dimensions. Taming this dog means to study, understand, and master this law and the conditions. on the way to meet Pluto in the underworld, Hermes, a god of guiding the soul, accompanies with you. You will encounter many psychonoetical challenges and tests there. But each time you overcome these psychonoetical conditions, you express more divine nature, so that Pluto, Hades, the ruler of the underworld, allows you to master the three worlds. Really, your last work is to put these iron strict rules under your control. And you tame the dog, which means you gain the ability to travel all three worlds freely at your will. As a researcher of truth, after long, sincere training, you will be able to bridge the gap between the dimensions and consciously pass from any dimension to another, passing through the etheric counterpart of your material body, psychical body, and noetical body. You can travel the material world, the psychical world, and the noetical world consciously at your will. You become the master of exosomatosis, the self-conscious out-of-body experience, and also become the master of self-conscious expansion. And you unite both of them. When you reach this state, you don't lose your memories. Since you have no gap between your bodies, you can bridge between all your dimensions, all your memories, and remember all your past incarnations. Not only concerning your own past, you can access to the cosmic memory called Akashic Record, that you can see all records of whole universe if you wish. Even when you experience the death of material body, you can step out of your material body consciously and continue to live your life. So you will not experience what is called death anymore. This is what Christ says in the Bible. If a man keep my saying, he shall never see death. Or, but I tell you of a truth. There be some standing here which shall not taste of death till they see the kingdom of God. You have overcome the laws of the three worlds, the king Erytheth and the king Pluto, the power of the material world and the power of the psychoanalytical world. No more labor from the King Elizabeth. Kerberos has to be set free again to where he was. Because the law of order between dimensions has to be there. And it is not for you anymore. Mastering the three worlds is a great initiation. It is called the initiation of Hermes Trismegistus. You have become the flying Hermes Trismegistus. That's why Hermes is attending with you in this journey. Now you are self-realized as a permanent personality self and initiated as a mighty helper, invisible helper, to work for the divine plan. Congratulations. Now you have completed the last labor. Slowly feel your material body and come back to your environment again. Welcome back. I have some comments. This is a hermit. He's holding Caduceus hermit on his left hand. He's also called the god of messenger. He has many titles, but he is the Greek god to attend with the soul, to guide. And once we master three bodies, we will be initiated as the Hermes Trismegistus, which means we can travel anywhere we wish, beyond the dimensions. It's exosomatic. And we have done all labors of Hercules. And the teaching says this way: all labors of Greek myth is originally from archangels. And someone received this inspiration. Oh, they all said that it's from, I heard it, I was inspired by God, angels, archangels. And it was taken over to Atlantis and old Egypt, and the Phoenicia. Sorry, in
That's all right.
Japanese we call it Phoenicia. Okay, Phoenicia. Okay, and at the end, passed down to the Greek people, and now we are studying by it. And the second point the teaching says is, it is easy to learn, but difficult to practice in your daily life. So practice again and again. Not, don't leave it just as your spiritual knowledge. To apply and manifest. Experience is the most important thing. Because, teaching says this, because our present day personality like to stick to our pattern, which we already established. So it's so difficult to move into the next stage. So we have to consciously work on this kind of type of exercise and imprint it in our subconscious and do the practice again and again. And one more advice. Teaching says even we self-realize and the people, or for example, people call us like a mystic. They, at the first level, they still talk about or think about something negative sometime. So they still have to work on the Stymphalian birds. Even the level of the reaching to the level of the mystic, they have to work on that. So all labors is such a precious labors. So please work hard. This is the message from the teaching. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. And we crucify our present day personality completely on the cross. This is a whole work. Okay? Please enjoy your lunch and see you in the afternoon class.
2:30, like usual?